Norman, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
I don't know if you share my frustration at this, but, you know, people say to me now, look, this has been going on for so long that we've just changed our plans. We just don't travel by train. I mean, I'm certainly one of those. I had to go up to Edinburgh during the festival, and the nicest way to go to Edinburgh is on the train. But I ended up flying because I thought, I don't know if the train is going to run, if they're going to call some kind of wildcat strike. You know, you just can't allow for that anymore. And so, but today, lots of people, certainly in many offices around the country, won't have been able to get to work. Lots of people who were trying to go away for the weekend, lots of people coming back from abroad where they've been stranded thanks to the air traffic controllers. You know, none of them can do anything. And why do these unions, why are they so recalcitrant? And you know, you may say to me, well, the government should negotiate better. I don't think they need to.
There's a whole lot packed in there.
Sorry.
The first thing is that leisure travel is actually up compared to pre-COVID. And because strikes are announced in advance, I suppose people are able to make their arrangements on days when strikes aren't taking place if they're travelling for leisure. And as far as commuting is concerned, commuting is, of course, well down compared to pre-COVID because people got used to home working to a degree, which means that on strike days, they simply work from home. So actually, from the union's point of view, the strikes are less effective than they would have been, say, 10, 15 years ago, where people were more set in their ways. As to why nothing's happening, I mean, I don't with ASLEF. I think with ASLEF, they are simply in a position where they've got a huge amount of power to bring the railway to a standstill, and they're refusing to give way on any changes to terms and conditions. That's the sticking point with them. They've been offered 8% over 2 years. It's dependent on terms and conditions being changed. They don't want to change those terms and conditions, and they haven't been negotiating, I think, since April, because that's a sticking point between the two sides. As far as the RMT is concerned, Mick Lynch, I think, has been negotiating in good faith, and he's come up with some deal almost with the government or with the train company, the government are behind the train companies, of course. But his executive are, I think, more political and don't want to engage with the deal that Mick Lynch himself has negotiated. He had to rug pulled up underneath them.
And that's the problem,
that's
isn't
where
it?
we are with those two.
Yeah, but that's
the
the
other
problem.
thing, just my last point on your point, is that if they're waiting for the Labour government to bail them out, they'll be sorry, because I think Rachel Reeves and her team are not going to give any more ground than the Tories do.
No, but you know this. You're a veteran of these things, Norman, without wishing to aid you in any way. You know, they expect the Labour Party to be more, shall we say, sympathetic towards union demands, and they always hope that when the Labour government gets in, it will actually be a better deal for them. And so whether they're mistaken about that, they'll have to wait and see. But I think the problem for a lot of people now is that, you know, they just have no faith in the train unions. And I think in the end, these unions will go the same way that we've seen the car unions going, the mining unions, you know, the shipbuilding unions, and they'll end up losing because trains will just be automated. And that's surely the only way this will end up.
Well, there is an issue as to how many people you should have on a train. I mean, on the DLR, the point that Richard Tice was making, my understanding is he actually have a member of staff on there for safety reasons, so it was not unstaffed.
Yeah, but there's nobody actually driving. But there's nobody driving it, though.
No, there's nobody driving it, but there is a member of staff on board. But I mean, look, I mean, there is a whole range of changes to terms and conditions which are appropriate for 2023, which need to be, in my view, introduced. And the deal has always been in my head that you change the terms and conditions, that genuinely releases money for the railway, and then you give some of that money, or most of it, back to the unions in terms of better pay. That's a deal which should be on offer. But there's reluctance on both sides, I think, to get to that particular point. I don't see this ending anytime soon at all.
No, I think that's absolutely right. But as I say, I think the people don't want to see the government caving in either, because the people see certainly train drivers as pretty well paid. They've got incredible terms and conditions, as many people do in transport unions overall, because in Transport for London, for example, the RMT guys have got some of the best deals you've ever seen in your life. You know, their working day starts as soon as they walk out their front door, and if they've got a 7-hour shift to do, they only actually end up doing about 4 or 5, because the travelling time on either side of it is included in the shift. So that kind of thing is a term and condition that ordinary people can't understand. They're kind of going, well, why do they get that and nobody else does? And I can understand them wanting to hold on. I can understand them wanting to hold on to it. But at the end of the day, we're also paying through the nose. I mean, we gave these train companies 700 million quid in 1 year during COVID just to keep the people working.
Well, I mean, effectively now all the trains have been nationalised. I don't understand Labour's policy actually about nationalisation of the trains. Everything's basically nationalised now anyway. All the train companies are running according to contracts set by the Department for Transport, which takes a revenue risk on the money coming in. As far as the workers are concerned, I mean, some of the RMT guys aren't paid very well. Let's be frank about
Yes,
it.
no,
But
I get
the drivers are paid. The drivers are paid pretty well. I think the average is £65,000 for a 4-day week for the train drivers. And the irony, Mike, is that they've done really, really well out of privatisation, because back in the old days of BR, they negotiated with one company, if you like, BR, and that applied across the whole network. What's happened since then is the train companies have not wanted to train drivers for a particular long time. They wanted to poach it from other people, so they've been able to ratchet up their wages in order to get the drivers which are moving around from company to company. So drivers have done really well since privatisation.
No, of course. But, I mean, at the end of the day, why is it possible for them to have such great jobs? And I accept that some of the people in the RMT are not paid as well. But at the end of the day, you know, these train companies can't seem to make any money. The model doesn't seem to work. You know, we were always told they subsidise better in other countries in Europe, and therefore the train services are much, much more reliable. But, I mean, again, like many things in this country, including the NHS, you know, pouring money into them never seems to work any better.
No, well, look, I mean, the model has changed, and people maybe don't be aware of this. The franchising model, which operated until 2018, has fallen over. It fell over. It was falling over anyway, but it fell over absolutely with COVID. We've now got a situation where the government effectively runs every single train in this country, and the companies are simply paid a management fee to do what the government wants them to do. So the railways have been effectively nationalised now. Now, what the problem is there is no incentive for the train companies who act as agents of the government to collect money. They get the same money whether or not there are passengers on the train or not.
Right.
And we have to, in my view, instill a situation whereby the train companies are incentivised to collect money and to boost passenger numbers. Public service contracts, that was promised in the government's Williams plan. We're still waiting for it.
Yeah, I mean, that is the problem. And, you know, Mick Lynch has previously said that he's going to keep these strikes going until such time as, you know, the government caves in. But clearly the government isn't going to cave in. I mean, do you suspect the government has got some ulterior motive here, that they've got some plan of action? I'd like to think they do, but tragically, I don't think they have.
No, I think Mick Lynch does want to do a deal. He's an old-fashioned union guy and wants to deal for his members. And I think he's prisoner of his own executive, who have a different agenda, and maybe more political agenda, than he does. I think the government, people like Hugh Merriman, and I think he's a very good rail minister, by the way, Hugh Merriman, and I like Mark Harper, the Secretary of State for Transport. I think they genuinely want to improve the railways, and they genuinely want to introduce methods which will push up passenger numbers and push up income for the railways. But they've got their own problems because number 10 and number 11 don't always support them. No,
that is the thing. So I guess from what you're saying, you don't seem particularly upbeat about what's likely to happen between now and Christmas. Are we just going to see more strikes, do you think?
We're going to see more strikes. We're going to see more strikes. I mean, I think it's a possibility they'll do a deal with the RMT, but I think the chances of ASLEF withdrawing their strikes, I think, are pretty remote. I think we're going to see ASLEF strikes through the election. But as I say, I think if the unions think they're going to get a better deal from Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, they'll be sadly disappointed, I think.
Yes, I think that's right. Norman, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Norman Baker, former Transport Minister himself there, talking about how there isn't much hope out there for any kind of resolution to this ridiculous situation where the RMT and ASLEF unions can literally bring the railways to a complete standstill.